Some military operations are remembered because they succeeded. Others are remembered because they changed history. Operation Entebbe belongs to a rare category that did both. Imagine this for a moment. A commercial airliner carrying hundreds of innocent passengers is hijacked by heavily armed terrorists. The hostages are flown more than 4,000 kilometers away into hostile territory. They are imprisoned inside an airport protected not only by terrorists, but by the army of a brutal dictator. The hijackers issue an ultimatum: release imprisoned terrorists, or every hostage dies. Almost every government believes a rescue mission is impossible. Yet one nation decides not to negotiate. Instead, it prepares one of the most daring military operations ever attempted. In just 53 minutes, Israeli commandos would fly across Africa, storm an enemy-controlled airport, eliminate the hijackers, destroy an air force on the ground, rescue over 100 hostages, and escape before enemy reinforcements could arrive. It sounds like a Hollywood blockbuster, but every major event in this story really happened. This is the incredible true story of Operation Entebbe, also known as Operation Thunderbolt, a mission that military academies around the world still study nearly 50 years later. Chapter 1: The Hijacking. The story began on June 27, 1906. Air France Flight 139 departed from Tel Aviv, Israel, heading for Paris with a scheduled stop in Athens, Greece. On board were 248 passengers and 12 crew members representing several nationalities. Everything appeared routine. After landing in Athens, additional passengers boarded the aircraft. Unfortunately, security at Athens airport was unusually weak that day. 4 terrorists carrying concealed weapons successfully boarded the flight. Only 8 minutes after takeoff, they revealed their guns and grenades. The aircraft had been hijacked. The terrorists immediately stormed the cockpit and forced the pilots to change course. No one knew where the aircraft was heading. Panic spread throughout the cabin. Parents tried to comfort frightened children. Passengers whispered prayers. Some believed they would never see home again. Chapter 2: Who were the hijackers? The hijacking was carried out by 4 terrorists working together. 2 were members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, External Operations, commonly known as PFLP-EO. The other 2 were German members of the far-left militant organization known as the Revolutionary Cells. The German leader was Wilfried Böse. His partner was Brigitte Kuhlmann. Their objective wasn't random violence. They wanted political leverage. They demanded the release of imprisoned Palestinian militants and other convicted extremists held in prisons across Israel and several other countries. Their strategy relied on hostage-taking. They believed governments would eventually surrender to save innocent lives. Chapter 3: Libya and the Journey to Uganda. The aircraft's first forced stop was Benghazi, Libya. The plane remained there for several hours. Fuel was loaded. A pregnant British passenger was released for medical reasons. Everyone else remained trapped. No one knew the final destination. Then the aircraft took off once again. Hours later, it landed somewhere almost nobody expected: Entebbe International Airport, Uganda. The choice shocked the world. Uganda was ruled by one of Africa's most feared dictators, Idi Amin. Chapter 4: Idi Amin enters the story. Idi Amin had once maintained friendly relations with Israel, but over time, his government shifted dramatically. He developed close ties with Palestinian militant groups and openly supported their cause. When Flight 139 landed, Amin personally appeared at the airport. Rather than confronting the terrorists, he welcomed them. The hostages were moved into an abandoned terminal building. Ugandan soldiers surrounded the building. Instead of protecting innocent civilians, they effectively became an armed security force for the hijackers. The crisis had become far more dangerous. Israel was no longer dealing with 4 terrorists. It was facing an entire hostile government. Chapter 5: The Selection. On June 30th, events became even darker. The terrorists began separating passengers according to nationality and Jewish identity. Passports were examined one by one. Jewish passengers and Israeli citizens were ordered into one area, everyone else into another. For many survivors, the scene brought back horrifying memories of Nazi Germany. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Eventually, around 148 non-Jewish passengers were released. They flew safely to Paris. But something extraordinary happened next. Air France captain Michel Bacos and his crew refused to leave. The terrorists offered them freedom. They declined. Captain Bacos insisted that abandoning his passengers violated everything a pilot stood for. He chose to remain with them. His courage would later earn international admiration. Inside the terminal, approximately 106 hostages remained. The terrorists then announced their final ultimatum: release 53 imprisoned terrorists and pay $5 million. Otherwise, beginning on July 4th, hostages would be executed. Time was running out. Chapter 6. Israel's impossible decision. The Israeli government now faced perhaps the hardest decision in its history. Should it negotiate with terrorists or refuse and risk the lives of more than 100 innocent people? Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Defense Minister Shimon Peres understood the stakes. Negotiating could encourage future hijackings. Refusing could cost innocent lives. Meanwhile, the hostages were held nearly 4,000 kilometers away, deep inside enemy territory. Most military experts believed a rescue operation was impossible. Yet behind closed doors, Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, had already begun searching for another option. Chapter 7. Mossad's intelligence miracle. Every successful military operation depends on intelligence. In Entebbe, intelligence became the greatest weapon. First came an astonishing discovery. Years earlier, the old Entebbe terminal had actually been built by an Israeli construction company. The original architectural blueprints still existed. They were immediately handed over to Mossad. For the first time, planners possessed an exact map of the building. Then came the released passengers. Mossad agents interviewed every survivor. Where were the terrorists positioned? Where were the hostages sleeping? Where were the Ugandan soldiers standing? Every detail mattered. Some former passengers had military backgrounds and produced remarkably accurate descriptions. Finally, additional aerial reconnaissance photographs were obtained. Within days, Israeli planners knew the airport almost as well as the Ugandan defenders themselves. The impossible mission slowly began looking possible. Chapter 8. Planning Operation Thunderbolt. The rescue mission received its operational name, Operation Thunderbolt. Later, it would also become known as Operation Yonatan. Overall command went to Brigadier General Dan Shomron. The assault force would be led by Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu, known simply as Yoni. The mission required extraordinary precision. Failure meant disaster. Every second had to be rehearsed. Commandos repeatedly practiced inside full-scale replicas of the Entebbe terminal. They memorized every doorway, every hallway, every possible enemy position. There would be no room for hesitation. Chapter 9. Flying into enemy territory. On July 3rd, 1976, 4 C-130 Hercules transport aircraft quietly departed Israel. Their journey would become legendary. The aircraft flew at extremely low altitude, sometimes only about 100 feet above the Red Sea. Flying so low kept them beneath enemy radar coverage. It was dangerous. One navigational mistake could send an aircraft crashing into the sea. Fuel created another challenge. The distance was simply too great. The Hercules aircraft carried far more fuel than normal. They were dangerously heavy during takeoff. Still, a return trip without refueling remained impossible. Israel secretly negotiated assistance from neighboring Kenya. President Jomo Kenyatta quietly allowed Israeli aircraft to refuel in Nairobi after the rescue. Without Kenya's cooperation, the operation might never have succeeded. Chapter 10. The Black Mercedes. Just before 11 p.m., the first Hercules landed silently at Entebbe. Its lights remained off. The aircraft's rear ramp lowered. Out rolled a black Mercedes-Benz, followed by 2 Land Rovers. Why? Because Idi Amin often traveled in a similar black Mercedes. Israeli planners hoped Ugandan guards would mistake the approaching convoy for the dictator's own motorcade. For several moments, the deception worked. Then everything changed. Chapter 11. The first shots. Ugandan guards noticed something unusual. They attempted to stop the vehicles. Israeli commandos first fired suppressed pistols. The guards survived. Immediately, unsuppressed assault rifles opened fire. The guards were killed. But now, the element of surprise was gone. Alarm spread across the airport. Every second became critical. The commandos abandoned the vehicles and sprinted toward the terminal. Chapter 12. The Assault. Inside the terminal, chaos erupted. Israeli soldiers shouted instructions in Hebrew. "Get down! Stay on the floor." Hostages immediately dropped for cover. The terrorists attempted to react. Wilfried Böse pointed his weapon toward the hostages before he could fire. Israeli commandos shot him. Brigitte Kuhlmann and the remaining hijackers were eliminated within minutes. The main hostage room was secured. The rescue phase had succeeded astonishingly quickly, but the battle wasn't over. Outside, Ugandan soldiers had begun fighting back. Chapter 13. Destroying Uganda's Air Force. Heavy gunfire erupted across Entebbe Airport. Israeli forces attacked the airport control tower. Additional commandos secured the perimeter. Then they turned toward another critical objective, Uganda's military aircraft. Parked nearby were MiG-17 and MiG-21 fighter jets. If those aircraft became airborne, the slow Hercules transports would have almost no chance of escape. Israeli commandos placed explosives and opened fire. Within minutes, 11 fighter aircraft were destroyed. Uganda's ability to pursue the rescue force disappeared instantly. Chapter 14. The Final Escape. Hostages were rushed aboard the waiting Hercules aircraft. Medical teams quickly treated the wounded. Everyone understood that enemy reinforcements could arrive at any moment. Exactly 53 minutes after landing, the first aircraft lifted off. One by one, the remaining aircraft followed. The impossible mission had succeeded. Chapter 15. The Cost of Victory. Despite the incredible success, the mission was not without tragedy. Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu was struck by sniper fire from the airport control tower. He became the only Israeli soldier killed during the operation. His death deeply affected Israel. The mission was later officially renamed Operation Yonatan in his honor. 3 hostages also lost their lives during the rescue. One was accidentally caught in the crossfire after failing to hear commands to remain on the floor. 2 others were killed during the firefight. Another tragedy remained unseen. A 74-year-old hostage named Dora Bloch had previously been transferred to a Kampala hospital after choking on food. She wasn't inside the terminal during the rescue. The following day, on Idi Amin's orders, Ugandan security forces removed her from the hospital and murdered her. The crime shocked the international community. Chapter 16. Return to Israel. When the rescued hostages landed at Ben Gurion Airport, the nation erupted in celebration. Families embraced loved ones. Crowds filled the streets. For Israelis, the operation became proof that their country would travel anywhere in the world to protect its citizens. Captain Michel Bacos and his Air France crew also received widespread recognition. Their refusal to abandon the hostages became one of the most admired acts of professional courage in aviation history. Chapter 17. The International Reaction. Not everyone viewed the operation the same way. Many Western governments praised Israel's courage and military precision. Others argued that Israel had violated Uganda's sovereignty. The debate quickly reached the United Nations Security Council. Uganda accused Israel of illegal aggression. Israel responded that it had acted in legitimate self-defense to save innocent civilians after Uganda openly cooperated with terrorists. No resolution condemning Israel ultimately passed. The legal and diplomatic debate continues among scholars even today. Chapter 18. Kenya pays the price. Kenya's secret assistance came with terrible consequences. Idi Amin blamed Kenya for helping Israel. Reports indicate that Kenyans living inside Uganda became targets of violent retaliation. Many fled the country. Relations between Uganda and Kenya deteriorated dramatically. Border tensions increased. East Africa briefly faced the possibility of a wider regional conflict. Chapter 19. The Fall of Idi Amin. Operation Entebbe severely damaged Idi Amin's international reputation. His military appeared weak. His government became increasingly isolated. Only 3 years later, in 1979, Tanzanian forces and Ugandan exiles overthrew his regime. Idi Amin fled first to Libya. Later, he settled in Saudi Arabia. He died there in 2003, far from the country he had once ruled through fear. Chapter 20. Why Operation Entebbe still matters. Military historians still study Operation Entebbe because it combined extraordinary intelligence, long-range aviation, special forces tactics, political decision-making, deception, and international diplomacy in a single mission. Several innovations made the operation unique. Ultra-low altitude flight to avoid radar detection, secret diplomatic coordination with Kenya for refueling, use of original architectural blueprints for mission planning, a disguised motorcade to delay enemy suspicion, simultaneous hostage rescue and destruction of enemy fighter aircraft, completion of the entire ground operation in less than 1 hour. Many modern hostage rescue doctrines around the world continue to reference lessons learned from Entebbe. Operation Entebbe wasn't simply about military power. It was about preparation, intelligence, leadership, and an unwavering commitment to protect innocent lives under impossible circumstances. It demonstrated that courage alone is never enough. Success comes from planning, discipline, teamwork, and the willingness to act when failure seems inevitable. Even today, nearly half a century later, those remarkable 53 minutes remain one of the boldest hostage rescue operations ever conducted. Whether viewed as a masterpiece of military strategy, an extraordinary act of national determination, or a controversial exercise of self-defense under international law, Operation Entebbe continues to shape discussions on counter-terrorism, special operations, and crisis response across the world. If history has ever shown that the impossible can become possible, Operation Entebbe stands as one of its most unforgettable examples.